Good day. My name is Yuri Richardson, and today I want to share with you my testimony of how I became a Christian, how I accepted Yeshua, aka Jesus, as my personal Savior. And it all starts out as a child, and I have my notes here beside me so that I can make sure and get all the important points out in this testimony, which I hope it will be short, and I hope that it would encourage someone. So, growing up here in Bermuda as a child, I was taken to church, not every week, and just maybe at certain times like Easter or Christmas, we would go to church, or on the odd occasion. But for the most part, I remembered what I experienced there at church, the hymns, the singing, the Bible stories, and I always was fascinating. I thought it was fascinating, and it was very interesting to me. And in the process of time, at 11 years old, I completed a series of Bible studies along with my mother and brother, and we were baptized. And so from there, I started going to church every week, and it was, for the most part, pretty good. I remember listening to some very good sermons, being impressed to do right and to do things that are taught in the Bible. I took Christianity very seriously, but at the same time, being a boy and liking to be around friends, I also had a lot of friends that I hung out with. And so over the course of times, getting into my teenage years, I ended up getting into just not serious trouble, but just doing a lot of different things I knew were not right to do, but my friends and everyone's doing it, so hey, why not? And so I lost the deep desire and relish that I had for spiritual things. Not so much lost it in the depth of my soul, but the cravings of having a life of fun with my friends, I prioritized over what I should have been focusing on, and that is my walk with God and, putting myself in the best possible position to get a very solid education as well. So I was considered at that time going to high school as the class clown, told a lot of jokes and did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done, but that was that. And so my story, I would say, from a biblical standpoint, is like the prodigal son. And most people are familiar with the story of the prodigal son, but just for point of emphasis, I want to emphasize a few things. It says that the prodigal son had he had a father and a brother. And the emphasis is on the younger son. And he said to his father, "Give me a portion of the goods that falleth to me." And he divided unto them his living. So that was kind of like the decision I made personally. I had a very sharp mind, very clear thinking. I had a very clear discernment about spiritual things, especially. I remember in my childhood just hearing God speaking to me so very clearly encouraging me to do what's right and everything. And I decided to go into the world and to, spend all that I had on riotous living. And when I say all that I had, I'm not talking about money per se. I'm talking about gifts that you're born with, like discernment, clarity of thought, depth of thought, a good memory, understanding things quickly, those type of things. So when you live that kind of a riotous life, smoking, drinking, and all that type of thing, it destroys in some degree, spiritual discernment. At any rate, so I started to get involved with friends and doing things that I know I shouldn't be doing. And at the same time, I started to allow myself to go places that I shouldn't go. Ended up going to a nightclub one night with my brother and my best friend at that time, and both of which were probably the most influential people in my life. And I knew I shouldn't go, but I thought, hey, I'm going to go anyway. And I wasn't old enough to get in. You had to be 18 to get into this nightclub, and I wasn't quite 18 yet, but I thought, hey, my friends promised me they'll get me in, and they did. So I'm up at the bar sitting, and I knew it wasn't the right place for me, and I knew I shouldn't be drinking. But at any rate, I started to drink, and I had already been like smoking some marijuana, and it wasn't the first time I had smoked marijuana, so it was just another night, really. But at any rate, and I wasn't like totally out of it, but I just started to hear a voice, an audible voice, and the voice was a very dark and very dreadful voice. And the voice basically said that I belong to Satan. Like I'm no longer a child of God, I'm a child of the devil, so to speak. And the voice was so clear, it was an audible voice. So I turned to see who it was that was speaking to me, because I just thought I would see a person next to me. And when I turned, I didn't see anyone sitting at the chair. That really started to like freak me out. And I was like, what in the world's going on? And I didn't tell my brother or best friend what was going on. I just told him, hey, listen, I got to get out of here. So and the voice was just repeating it over and over and again in my mind. And as the voice was repeating itself over and over again to me, not only in my mind, but I can hear it audibly, I just felt a darkness come over me that I cannot explain, like very dark. And I had already known at that time the principles of the Bible, and in Matthew 12, where it talks about the unpardonable sin. And I thought that I had committed the unpardonable sin. That's how serious the darkness that came over me was. And I got out of the nightclub. I just thought, hey man, this is a horrible night. I went and caught the last bus leaving town. And on my way home, I couldn't help but think about all that happened. And I was thinking to myself, I just need a good night's rest, and tomorrow I'll be okay. And, but lo and behold, I got home and I went to bed, and in the morning, I felt worse than I did the night before. And it was a beautiful morning. It was sunny. It was, the weather was really good. And I remember all this clearly because we went fishing the next day. Like I was the stepson of a fisherman, and so we went out fishing, which is what I love to do. And we got out in the boat, and I thought I'll be happy, but it was just emptiness. And it was a beautiful day, but I felt it could be like pitch black darkness that you can't even see your hand in front of your face. And it would have been like, yeah, because that's how I feel inside. That's how dark it was. And I just felt like I have no hope of eternal life, no hope in this life, because I didn't feel happy. I couldn't feel happy and enjoy fishing. And so that started 10 years of what I call my dark days. And for those that want to, you know, have a look, because that's an experience I had. Every experience has to be tested from the Bible. If you read Deuteronomy 28, verses 65 through 67, you'll see about God giving, if we are disobedient, he says that he will give us a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. And that's exactly what I had. And so in the daytime, when it was all bright and sunny, I would be like, man, I can't wait for tonight. When I go to sleep, I would get some, you know, a break from this. And when nighttime would come, I would be like, oh man, I wish it was morning. And that's what it says here in the Bible. And I didn't know, you know, I didn't know at the time that this was the experience, but it says, in the morning thou shalt say, would God it were even or night. And at even thou shalt say, would God it were morning. And that's exactly what I was going through. And I would go to my pastor and to people that I thought were really spiritual, and I would explain to them what I'm going through. I didn't tell everyone. I was just very selective in who I told, because I knew that what I was going through was so serious that, you know, the average person is not going to be able to help me. So I go to my pastor and he'll quote Bible verses and, you know, claim the promises of God and things of that nature. But it didn't do anything for me. It was just like, you know, it just didn't do anything for me. Let's put it to you that way. And so when I exhausted all my resources in terms of going to different people to get help, going to the Bible and trying to read, I just felt condemned, like condemned to eternal death. That's how I felt. And it was nothing that anyone can say that would change that feeling. So that started 10 years of just dark days. And this began when I was 17 years old. And so for the next 10 years, I just decided I'm going to hell. So I may as well just have fun going to hell. So I stopped going to church and I put my life into greater sin in terms of, like, you know, just parties, nightclubs, not nightclubs so much, but what we call Bermuda sessions, like reggae parties and stuff like that, where you just drink, smoke weed, and you go to football games and you just get high and just, but I was empty. You know, everything that I loved of the world, I was able to do now, because I said, well, I'm going to hell, so I may as well have fun doing it. But I didn't have any fun doing it. My friends around me, they would be like having a lot of fun, or it seemed to me they were having a lot of fun, but I was just empty and dark inside. So I continued on in this way. And the only time that I actually felt like I was getting any kind of pleasure, to be honest with you, was when other people were around me that knew better than to do what they were doing, and I saw them doing bad things. That's what made me feel good. It made me feel, you know, misery likes company. That's exactly how it was with me. So at any rate, I'm going through this whole experience, and I would, you know, and at this time, coming down toward the end of the 10 years, you know, this is when AIDS was just coming out, and I was living a promiscuous life. So I started to think, man, what if I contracted AIDS? And I used to say to myself, I'd rather have AIDS and have the peace of God than to have this darkness over me and have the, you know, and going to hell. It was just horrible. I mean, I had to go to the doctor several times because I had heart palpitations, because the fear of these things used to frighten me almost to death. And so this was my life. So what happened after the 10 years, well, coming down close to the 10 years, I was in college at that time in the United States, and I used to love going running. And where my college campus was, it was in the country, and I love country living. I love being out in nature. So I used to go running, and I just felt like I can get away and just, run and just look at all the scenes of nature. And, I just love doing that. So one day I was running, and, I knew it now to be the voice of God, even though I felt like God had abandoned me. Really, I abandoned God. But at any rate, a few days before that, I had met a girl, and I felt like, and then for guys that you would know this when you have your list of things that you would like for, your girlfriend to have or whatever. So I met this girl, and she seemed to me to have all the things on the list. She checked, all the boxes and everything. And so when I was running this day, it came to mind, do not get involved with this person because it's going to be trouble. And I was like, I ain't going to worry about thinking about that, because I know for a fact that that's not the voice of God to me. It's just, my own mind, stuff like that. So I didn't really regard it much. And then I don't know whether or not it was that night or it was close, maybe a few days later, or it could have been that night. I had a dream, and it was like a nightmare. And in the dream, someone was held me up at gunpoint, and they were like, they're gonna kill me. And I was like, I started running, and I ran into this lady's house that lived next door, and she literally lived next door to me. The house was next door to me. So it was a dream that was based on reality. And I knew the house. And so I ran to the house in the dream, knocked on the door, and I said, look, could you help me? Someone's trying to kill me. And the lady was like, no, get away from here. I don't want nothing to do with it, type deal. And I woke up in a fit of terror. And I was like, wow, what was that all about? You know what I mean? It was like, wow, that really, that really kind of made me think, man, what is going on here? So at any rate, so when I was thinking about this girl and getting involved and everything like that, I didn't really connect the two together. So at any rate, one day she was over at my house, and she was a vet student, so she was studying for some kind of exam, and I was doing, my work, like architecture work, because I was an architecture student. And so I got a call, and a guy answered the phone, and he was like, hey, can I speak with this person? I'm not going to mention her name because I wouldn't, if she ever saw this testimony, she would know it's her. But so anyway, I said, no, you can't speak to this person. They're over at my house. No, you can't speak to them, and kind of hung up. And a few days later, the person called my house. The guy called my house again, and he was like, hey, I need to talk with you. And all of a sudden, I just felt like this sudden sense of dread, I can't explain it other than to say it was just a fear that came over me that something serious is about to happen. And I was like, oh boy. And I told him, yeah, you can come over. Even though all of a sudden, I just felt like, man, it's like the best way I can explain it is something seriously critical is going to happen, like something very bad is going to happen to you. And so I said, yeah, you want to come over? Yeah, you can come over. And when I got off the phone, I was thinking to myself, hey, you better get out of here. Something bad's going to happen. And I was like, yeah, let me get out of this house. Let me go somewhere, get away from this situation. But I cannot explain it other than to say, it's like something took over me and said, no, you're not. You're not going anywhere. You're going to stay here and face the problem. So everything in me was saying, leave, but I couldn't. I just couldn't leave. So, so I stayed there. I felt like I had to stay. So, and I knew it was trouble. I knew this guy was going to be trouble. So anyway, a knock comes to the door, the living room door, and even the knock told me this is not gonna be a good thing. So I opened the door, and as soon as I opened the door, the guy that was at the door like punched me right in my mouth and started fighting right in my house. Like, this was, you know, pretty serious. So, but, you know, I'm the type of person that if I get really, really angry, someone's gonna die. It's gonna be me or that person. That's how seriously angry I get. But for some reason, I was not angry at this person. I felt a certain restraint and a certain peace, but I was terror-stricken about the situation at the same time. And all I can do is defend myself. I couldn't hurt the person or, you know, cause them any bodily harm. I just couldn't do it. The only thing I could do is defend myself from any blows, for any furniture trying to, you know, pick up chairs, trying to hit me with it or whatever. So the person saw that he could not win in a fight against me. So he said, I'm gonna kill you. And he ran down to his Jeep. And what came to my mind at that time is, follow him outside. Do not stay in this apartment. So I ran downstairs because I lived on the second floor of this 2-story apartment building. I ran downstairs, and as I was running downstairs, I saw him like coming out of the back car door with a rifle, because this guy does hunting. And he pointed the rifle up at me and was ready to shoot. And I was like, I just started running, and I just was screaming out, saying, in my mind, I was saying, God, please, please save me, please save me. And I ran right to the house that was in my dream, and I knocked on the door, and the lady was like, no, 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 I don't want any trouble. And she was like, no, I am not letting you in. And so that's when the dream and everything came to my mind, that like, wow, this is the very thing that I had dreamt about, you know, a short time before. So what happened after that, I kind of ran over to a friend's house, and I kind of like stayed there for a couple of days till everything cooled down. And because this guy was the ex-boyfriend of this girl, but apparently like she broke off with him, but he was like, oh no, we're not going to break up type of thing. So he was really, you know, so that's what kind of caused this whole problem. So at any rate, it was very close to finals. So, and I had to go to like, to present my project, my architectural project. It was just a mess. I had blood all over me and everything. But suffice to say, after that semester, the girl and I, we were supposed to hang out in Atlanta for a few days before I got on the plane to come back to Bermuda. But I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna, you know, do that. Like, I just went ahead and got on the bus and went to Atlanta and got my flight back home to Bermuda. And so I was kind of like trying to think about, hey, what's going on in my life and what's happening. And I knew enough of the Bible to know that only God can give you like a dream that would 100%, right down to the details, come to pass. So I knew it was God. And at the same time, there was a struggle because I loved going out with my friends. Like, my friends were like, they were really like like family to me, really. And so, and there was a few good friends that I had in my life that, um, I feel like I would die for them. Uh, so I got back to Bermuda, and my friend was like one of my friends I grew up with. We were more like brothers than anything. So he says, "Hey, let's go to this game." And so, hey, that's what you do in Bermuda. You go to football game, and in Bermuda we call it soccer. And it was a night game up at Somerset. So I said, okay, yeah, sure. So we go, and when you say let's go to a game, it it's not just going to watch a football game. It's going to smoke weed and watch the game. So I knew what it involved, and at the same time, I was thinking to myself, man, what am I gonna do with my life? So anyway, we went to the game and started smoking just like usual, and all of a sudden, I saw my eyesight going, and I'm like, what is going on? Like my eyes literally started to dim out everything, and then my hearing started to dim out everything, and then I started to lose like any kind of strength. And this has never ever happened to me before. Like I said, I had been smoking weed now for years, and shit was never anything like that. And this is before like guys would be, doing all kind of things to marijuana, and adding stuff to it and doing all kind of chemical changes. This was when you just got weed, and it was just homegrown or imported or whatever. But it was, you didn't have problems like that back then, like anyone spiking your spliff or anything like that. So anyway, so I just fell right on the ground, and I can hear my friend saying, "Hey, are you all right? You all right?" And I don't know how long I was out for, but I don't think it was that long. And then my vision came back, and my strength and hearing, and I got up and I said to myself, I really gotta make my decision on what I'm gonna do with my life, because I think God is really trying to get my attention. Because even though I was smoking marijuana, I've never had that experience before. And especially in the context of what just took place in terms of in school and everything, I knew that God was speaking to me and was saying to me, the language was to me is like, you got to make up your mind what you want to do, because you're not going to have any more chances, because you know too much, and you got to make up your mind what you're going to do. No one can help you. The pastor can't help you. The elder can't help you. Your family can't help you. Your friends can't help you. No one can help you but me. This is what was coming to my mind. And to make that kind of sacrifice when my friends and meant everything to me, and I knew I had to make a decision, and I decided, like, I'm gonna serve God. I gotta break free of all my friends, because they're just gonna, they're not gonna help me in the right way, because they're not doing right themselves. And for me, hanging around them is only gonna make it worse for me and for them. So I said, you know what? I'm just gonna do what God wants me to do. So I started like waking up every morning very early in the morning, and I would wake up and I would go to this like a place way out from where everyone is, and I would just pray, like read my Bible and pray, read my Bible and pray every day. That's all I would do, read my Bible and pray. And every day I get up, I would feel like I am hopelessly lost. Like this, it was like you had a 500-pound weight on your chest. That's how I felt. And at the same time, something in me was saying, hey, it's time to pray. It's time to go out and seek God. And I would just follow that voice. I wouldn't listen to how I feel or anything. I'd just go out and do what I needed to do. So anyway, so that was how, that was the beginning of me coming out of my dark days. I'm just on my phone now because I just want to make sure I'm following my notes, because I don't want this to be a long testimony. So that's how I began to come out of my dark days. And that's how I knew God was with me. And so I started doing a lot of fasting and praying, fasting and praying, fasting and praying, and studying the Bible a lot, like every day. And at this time, I weren't working per se. I was back at home from school, and I was trying to decide what I'm going to do with my life and everything. But I felt like I needed to devote all my attention to getting myself sorted out spiritually. To me, it was more important than anything. So I spent a lot of time studying with a few friends of mine. We would study the Bible every day, like studying prophecy, studying, the positions of truth that is taken from the Bible. We would like really study deep. And so we did that for quite some time. And during that time, I had met my wife at church. She was not from Bermuda, but she had visited the island. And so she came here to visit a friend of hers, and we met. And so we kind of had a long distance friendship at that time. And it was during the time that I was studying with friends of mine that I had a vision of my wife and I in heaven. And that's a whole different story. I'm not going to get into that, but just to let you know that, like, as I was seeking God, like he says, if you seek me with all your heart, you will find me. Well, that's kind of how it was with me. So anyway, so what happens next is that, let's see, so I got rebaptized and started going to church, really studying, praying, seeking out those that were really trying to do what's right and things of that nature. We got married. I got married at 28, and my wife and I was telling you about, we got married. And since that time, we raised our 4 children. And when I say it was difficult, it was very difficult. I thought, hey, give my life back to God, everything is going to be just smooth sailing. You know what I mean? The prosperity gospel. God's going to bless you and, bless your business and bless this and bless that. And you're just going to have abundance. Well, it didn't work out that way. And it hasn't worked out that way. But have I been blessed? Definitely. Has the road that I've been traveling been easy? No, it has not been easy. It's been very difficult, but it's a safe road. So let's see, I'm just putting my glasses on so I can look. So coming up to a more present time, since the time we got married, we brought up our 4 children. And let me just mention this. We always had enough in terms of, but it didn't come just by doing nothing. The best way I could put it is that we lived very frugally. My wife homeschooled our children, so we didn't have to buy uniforms. We didn't have to, take out, transportation expenses and all that kind of thing. So we were living on a shoestring budget. So what people would say, hey, you had too many children. Well, I don't have any children. We're empty nesters now, and my situation hasn't changed. So it wasn't because, oh, you got too many children while you're poor. As a matter of fact, we had a few people that helped us when we couldn't pay our rent. They will help us, like tremendously help us, to be honest with you. So the Lord definitely blessed and helped us, but it was still hard times. Sometimes we didn't have anything to eat. I'll have to go and climb loquat trees looking for loquats, or looking for, grapefruits and stuff like that, so that we can have something to eat. Sometimes I'll go to the convenience store, didn't have any money, ask the lady if I can get something on credit. And sometimes, so that's a whole nother story. But at any rate, so it wasn't easy, and it hasn't been easy. And the best way I could describe it is that at this point, in Luke chapter 16, it says, there was a certain rich man which was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fared sumptuously every day. And there was a certain beggar, and I emphasize that word beggar, named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate full of sores. And his situation, Lazarus' situation, was so despicable that it says in verse 21, and desiring to be fed with the crumb. No, well, wait there. Let me skip. No, I'm going down. Let me just back up a little. It says, now he was laid at the rich man's gate, and it says he was full of sores. And then if you read the next verse, it talks about moreover the dogs licked his sores. So he was really in a bad condition. And I could really relate to that story, because what it's been like for us, my wife and I, well, let me just speak about myself, but it has been for my wife and myself. We've been, that's our lot, kind of, from a financial standpoint, from a temporal standpoint. My wife is very smart. She went to go to college. She was doing really well at 50 when she had, all our children had, left the house, going to college and everything like that. And she would be doing better than people in her class that were half her age, less than half her age and everything. But did we get our degree? No. I went back to school to try and finish my degree, and it didn't happen. Ran out of money. So, and the money didn't come. So we take it as, well, and when I say we take it as that's providential, we tried to get the money. We tried to do everything, scholarships and all that kind of stuff, but it didn't work out. So anyway, when I refer to Lazarus, the rich man Lazarus, is with the understanding that temporarily that's been my lot. Not because I want it, because I hate poverty. I'm going to be honest with you. I absolutely hate it. I hate asking people to help me. I hate being in a situation where I cannot, have control of my surroundings and have it the way that I would like it. I absolutely hate it. But that's been my lot. And you reach a point in your life where you have to say, you have to accept certain things that you can't change. And I know that goes right against the prosperity gospel, and people were like, oh no, you should, have this positive mentality. You should, speak out your blessing and all that. Tell you, well, if it works for you, that's wonderful. And, but I've been all through that, and I would have no part of it, because the Bible says that Jesus learned obedience through suffering, and Jesus was very poor. My wife and I have been very poor. We've been homeless. We've slept in a tent. We've slept on a park bench and bus stops. Do you think I like that? I hate it. I absolutely hate it. But for righteousness' sake, I absolutely love it. Because during those times, I have such a peace and oneness with God that I cannot describe. So in the midst of all our trials, there's the peace of God and the love of God. So in that sense, I rejoice in tribulation. So, okay, so now then what happened? Okay. So what happens next is that I was, I'm striving to make heaven my home. I don't do everything right like I should. And the Lord was dealing with me on a certain issue, but I weren't being as mindful as I should, like really focusing on what God wants me to do. And I always was making all these excuses. So the Lord decided, okay, well, if you don't hear me one way, you'll hear me another. So in 2016, I had a very serious medical crisis where I had a seizure, and I was like, really? And I was thinking to myself, why would I have a seizure? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't, I'm not a thief. I don't go and cheat on my wife. I don't, all these different things. But if the Lord's telling you, if you're negligent in one area, well, that's sin, okay? And I don't care how small it seems. And I don't care if no one else sees it, but God sees it. And if he's telling you to deal with that issue and you don't deal with it, in his love and mercy for you, he'll say, okay. My mom used to always say, if you don't hear, you'll feel. And so that's how God dealt with me. So when I had the seizure, for about 2.5, maybe 3 years after that, I couldn't eat any cooked food, any processed food, any processed food. If I take a little crumb of a cookie, I would be like ready to have a seizure. That's how it would be. The only thing I could eat is raw food, and I had to eat that with turmeric. And how I knew what to do after I had this crisis, I felt like my kidneys were shutting down. I felt like, because I'll go online and look things up, and I knew about anatomy. When I was a boy, I wanted to be a doctor, so I would know what to look up. I don't, advocate this for anyone else, because I was so poor. You can go to the doctor all you want. They're going to give you minimal care, and you sit you over in the room, and you would die. That's how it is. Well, that's how it is. Money, money, money. That's what people want. So as far as I'm concerned, I thought the best way to do is to look up natural remedies for this and that. And when I prayed, I knew like I was like in a serious medical condition. And I didn't attribute that to what I was eating so much, because I was eating, like, I've been vegan now for over 30 years. But it was not what I was eating, but it was how much I was eating. So, because I'm a foodie, and the Lord was like, no, man, you need to cut down here, you need to cut down here. I wouldn't listen. Well, you feel. So I had a seizure. And after that, when I had the seizure, my dark days came on me really strong again. So I'm in the hospital, and I feel like I've committed the unpardonable sin. And for those of you that have never been through this, you don't ever want to go through this. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. It is so horrible. So I feel like I've committed the unpardonable sin. And at the same time, I am in the hospital and feel like one foot is in the coffin already, and the other foot is on its way over into the coffin. That's how serious it was. And so in the midst of all that, a nurse comes to me, like a Jamaican nurse. My wife's from Jamaica anyway, and I love Jamaican people. They're nice. But you would know that Jamaican people are very strong-willed and strong-headed. So she came to me in a very stern voice. Oh, I hear that you don't take drugs, but you're gonna have to take this drug because it's gonna stop your seizures, and if not, you can die. Or she said something like, really, like, you really need to take this. And in my like absolute deplorable condition, I was like, okay, I'll take this drug or whatever, because I don't, in general, don't take any drugs for anything. I would look up natural remedies. And I'm not saying that that should be a template for anyone else. If you want to take, drugs, aspirin, whatever medication you want, that's on you. I'm not trying to teach anyone anything, but I'm just saying what works for me and what my own personal situation is. But at any rate, she gave it to me. I had a second seizure when I was away in Colorado. And again, whenever I would vary a hairbreadth from my very strict regimen of eating, and I'll have a seizure. And I had 3 seizures, one here, one in the States, and one on my way back from the UK. I had a seizure on the plane. Can you believe it? And that was because I was eating tomatoes. I had eaten tomatoes, which is inflammatory, actually, as a matter of fact. And I weren't eating like too much tomatoes, but it was like, my body was still trying to recover. Let's put it to you that way. So when I had the seizure on the plane, I felt like when you have a seizure, you feel like you're gonna die. And you can die. And my wife, and I thank God for my wife, and she's my best friend and on this earth. And I was able to lay down on her lap, and I had a seizure in her lap, and she was there for me, and I love my wife. So anyway, the plane landed. was taken to the hospital and everything like that. They wanted to give me drug medication. I told them, listen, I'm not going to have any drugs because I can control seizures with with what I eat, and I have to be very careful what I eat and how much I eat. And that's how it's been from then to now with near abject poverty. When I say near abject poverty, just you know, wow. I'm sure I can get into that more later. I'm not going to say too much more on that right now. But my experience is that when I was away with my wife in Colorado, when I had the seizure, at that time I was away to, be there for my wife because she was in college at the time trying to get her degree in accounting. And at that time, we were having some problems between us, and so I decided we were going to go to the UK to live, and she was like, I should go to the UK and get a job, and I was like, I think I'm going to go back to Bermuda. So I decided to come back here. She decided to go to the UK, and so that's when we kind of split up. And it wasn't because she was cheating on me or I was cheating on her. It was none of that nonsense at all. It was more like we're dealing with some issues, and the situation was not resolving itself, and that's another story. But at any rate, we had separated for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, maybe. So during that time, I was alone. None of my children were with me because they were all in the UK. My wife weren't with me, and I weren't on good terms with my children, or at least some of them. And my wife was, we were on good terms. My wife and I were always on good terms. Even when we were separated, we were talking on the phone for hours and stuff like that. So, but during that time when I was in Bermuda, girls would want to check me out, oh, this, that, and the other. And in my mind, it was like, you gotta be kidding. I was just as firm as a rock because of Yeshua Messiah. And even though I was going through this terrible ordeal of darkness, at the same time, God was giving me encouragement. But I wanted to say one thing. When I had my medical health crisis, also what came on me at that time is deep thoughts of deep suicidal thoughts. And to me, it was more than just thoughts. It was more like my whole body was saying to me, your wife don't love you, God don't love you, your children don't love you, and your life is a failure. You may as well kill yourself. That's how serious it was. And at the same time, I had a construction job, and every day sometimes I was making 5 o'clock in the morning because we were working at a doctor's office, below a doctor's office, so we had to do work there. And I had serious health problems, and I'd be coming to work. I remember one time in particular, I felt like I was just gonna faint and pass out. And but at the same time, I was praying and asked God, help me not to faint or pass out. And I would have a seizure or something like that. And the Lord heard my prayer, and I lost a lot of weight at that time. I was only weighing 120 something pounds, and my ideal weight's 150. So I had lost a lot of weight. People were looking at me yeah, you're gonna go to the grave. But thank God I'm not in the grave, in the flesh, but not in the spirit. But anyway, and I was operating this 80-pound compressor hammer on the job. So it weren't easy. The hammer was almost my weight, and I had a hard job, but the Lord gave me grace to deal with it. And I wasn't a slothful worker. You can ask people that I worked with. These guys will be bigger and stronger than me, but yet they'll see that I could easily hang pace with them. You ask them, they'll tell you. Not in terms of the volume of work. These guys were strong guys, but they saw that, they'll get tired quick, and I'll just keep working. And they man, what is this guy on? But anyway, I'm making reference to that time frame because at one point I'd be going out to pray, and I felt like God is not listening to me, God is not hearing me. And one time I had a dream the night before, and in the dream it was like I was walking in this park and over by this cliff, and in Bermuda we have a lot of dog trails, and it was by a dog trail, and I was like looking and I was walking, and at one point I said, man, I gotta watch my step because I don't want to step in any dog poo or anything like that. And I thought it was an interesting dream. I was like, man, what was that about? And it had some significance, but I didn't know what it was. But this particular day I was out in prayer and just in nature, and I felt like my prayers were not reaching God. Like I thought, man, like you feel like that God is not listening. He's 1 trillion light years away. That's how it feels. And it's like you're just praying to the trees, or, you know what I mean? Your prayers just going up and hitting the leaves and bouncing back. You know what I mean? That's how it felt. And at the same time, I'm dealing with severe suicide thoughts. And it's even greater than thoughts. It was like everything in me was like, you may as well commit suicide. And so I'm walking over by the cliff, and it's like, if I go over there, I felt like that's what's going to happen. I'm going to jump off this cliff. And I felt like, almost like I could not even control myself. I was just walking closer to the cliff, walking. And then I looked down and I said, man, I got to watch where I'm walking, because I don't want to walk in any dog poo. And that's when the dream just came right back to me the very night before, or close to that time. And I was like, man, this is the dream that I had. And I was so encouraged, because I knew that God was still dealing with me and helping me. And that encouraged me a lot to really like hold on. And with that one thought, did the suicide thoughts go away? No, but I was given grace to overcome the suicide thoughts and the thoughts of darkness and complete blackness. Just, I was able to function in life in spite of all of that, and to continue to press on by just faith, like just faith, not even hope, just faith, you know. And really, it's like that experience I've come to cherish quite a bit, because in this life, sometimes if it would appear as if everything is just all against you, but God is there. He really is. But he can't pamper us like little babies. You gotta grow up and be mature, and you're gonna learn how to take hard knocks from the devil and still get up and continue on in the strength and power of God. Because the devil is a serious foe, and he is there to try and knock you out flat forever. But if we persist in the Lord, even though everything says just stop, but you still persist in the Lord, you will be rewarded. You will. Well, I was, and I know he's no respecter of persons. So anyway, having said all that, oh man, it's 53 minutes. I didn't even think it would be this long. Okay, let's look at my notes. Okay, my wife and I reunited in, I think it was 2020. My life now today is, okay, before I go to my life now today, if you read Psalms 88, that whole chapter, that helps to give you a good idea of what I was going through in my dark days. That will give you a very good idea. Okay, so I still, like, to wrap it all up in the next minute or two, I'm still very, very poor, but the Lord is there to guide me. And I consider myself like the Canaanite woman, you know, in Matthew chapter 15. And when she was asking Yeshua to heal her daughter, who was vexed with the devil, and Yeshua, it says, and Yeshua said to her, it is not meet to take the children's bread and give it to dogs. that was the attitude of the Jewish people. You know, if you're not if you're not an Israelite, you know, you're not really, you know, well, that's what the verse says. But Yeshua, do you think he felt like that in heart? No way. He loves people, everyone. I don't care what nationality you are. But he was testing the woman's faith because he wanted to teach his disciples a lesson of embracing everyone, Jew, Gentile, no matter what. And the implication is she's a dog, and she kind of won the argument. When I say won the argument, in the sense of in love, because just like Jacob, you know how Jacob overcame and he prevailed against God, you know what I mean? So it's not like he's stronger than God, you know. I don't want you to think that, not at all. But we can prevail with God if we have the Spirit of Christ. And she had the Spirit of Christ, and she says, she said, of a truth, Lord, like, yeah, I'll take the dog's position. Yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. So, and, you know, Yeshua, Jesus, he said, be it unto you. And she got the blessing that she was seeking. So in this life, I kind of have that verse there to show that, you know, I am a reproach to my denomination religion. I'm not going to say what it is. Some people will probably want to send me to the pit of hell because I don't say the name of what it is. But there is no religion on this earth that's living up to all the Bible truth that we should live up to. But God has a people in every religion. You could be Buddhist, God loves you. You can be Roman Catholic, God loves you too. You can be, you know, way out on, you know, a New Ager, God loves you too. You can be an atheist or agnostic, God loves you. He really does. But he has one way to heaven, and that is through Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. But not all those that say that Lord, Lord will enter into the kingdom. So don't let the hypocrisy of Christianity stop you from seeking God with all your heart. Just get a King James Bible and read it and pray earnestly, and God will reveal himself to you. And if you give your life to him, you will be one of his children, even if you never step foot in a Christian church. Because where 2 or 3 are gathered together in Yeshua's name, he is in the midst to bless. So we're coming up on an hour now. I didn't want it to be this long, but at any rate, I hope this testimony was a blessing to someone out there. I believe it is a blessing to someone, and it is my prayer that you would journey with me on studying the life of Yeshua. And I'm putting out a video pretty soon going through the last 24 hours of Yeshua's life and extracting lessons from his life that we can apply to ourselves today that are living here in the end of time, because we are in the end of time. I don't think anyone would deny that fact. But so we would like for you to journey with us. My YouTube channel is called Arrested for Sedition. It's a very provocative name, but we'll get into that, why that name and everything. So thank you so much for listening to my testimony, and God bless you and save you and your loved ones and your enemies as well, because he said, but I say unto you, love your enemies. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless.